Hi guys, welcome back to LCF. The World Cup might be over, but I think the conversations should continue. Now that the emotions have settled from that final, I think there's a lot that we can take from the tournament, whether it be referees, whether it be new technology, whether it be Spain's dominance, Argentina's antics. I think there's a couple of lessons that we can take into club football because club football is only around the corner. I didn't want to relive the whole tournament as it happened, but I just wanted to talk about some key takeaways. And I'll also be giving my goal of the tournament, save of the tournament, my game of the tournament, and finally my team of the tournament, which will also have my player of the tournament. So let's get into it. Let's chat football. And I wanted to start with the first segment, which is a ref watch segment. Now, I've gathered 6 different clips and I'm going to be going through each one by one. So I'm going to start with the first one. And the first one came in one of the first games, which was France against Senegal, and it involves Mbappe and Mane. So you can see Mbappe is driving into the penalty area from a wide position, and Mane comes flying out of nowhere. He's quite late. I think he's out of control. I think it's quite a reckless challenge. It's quite desperate, and I think he makes contact with Mbappe, and he stops Mbappe from continuing his pass. Now, this one divided a lot of opinion, but for me, I personally think a penalty should have been awarded. What was mad though was that the referee, when he went to the screen and he came back, he made his announcement. He said that Mbappe initiated the contact. I struggled with that part. Now, going to be honest, guys. I think whether or not you think it's a penalty is one debate, but if anything, I think Mbappe is trying to get out of the way. But yeah, look, a penalty wasn't given. But I'd love to know what's your opinion on it. I think Mbappe's already on his way down, but I just think that contact, I think, it's quite significant. But what do you think? The second incident involves the GOAT, Lionel Messi. It involves Argentina and Algeria. So Lionel Messi, he's not really known for closing down for his defensive contribution, but in this match, he actually closes down the Algerian player Mandi, and his studs make contact with the right calf of the player. Now, this one, I don't think it's quite clear cut. I think it's actually quite a grey area in the game because we saw similar incidents in the Premier League, like going back last season. There was, I think, an incident with Foden on Calvin Bassey. There was an incident with Havertz on a Burnley player, I think, with Arsenal's last home game of the season. And there was also a one involving Javi Simmons against Liverpool, I believe. And Javi Simmons was the only one that actually got punished for quite a similar challenge, I would say. This one involving Messi, I don't think he's trying to hurt the player. I don't think he's trying to endanger the player. But I think when you're coming in at that angle and when the studs meet the calf, I think trying to defend the challenge, it just gets tougher. And I think if a red card was given for that challenge, then I don't think he could have had any complaints there, to be honest. But I'd love to know what you feel on the challenge. I think just looking at a screenshot of it and seeing, like, you have to actually watch it to get a better idea of it, because still images sometimes, they can paint a completely different picture, but it doesn't look great on the still image either. So I'd be interested to see where you stand on it, but it's definitely an area where there's not been consistency for a long time. So that moves on to the third incident, and this comes in the game involving Czech Republic and South Africa, and this one involves handball. The Czechia player Pavel Sulch, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but he tries to close down a shot from the South African player. The distance between the two players is so tight, and I think, like, he gets penalised there for a handball. His hand is quite close to his body. I don't think his arm is outstretched. It doesn't react in terms of going towards the ball. And it just got me wondering, like, what is the player supposed to do in this incident? I'd love to know what he's supposed to do, because as footballers, your hands have to be somewhere. You can't just remove them. Yeah, they may have followed the law, the referee in this situation, but I just don't think that actions like this should be rewarded. The next incident comes in the game with Scotland against Brazil, and it involves Jack Hendry for Scotland. He's turning back towards his goalkeeper. He's attempting to play a pass back, but then Vinny Jr. comes on his blind side and he sticks his foot in a position that interferes with the kick and motion of Jack Hendry. What happened at the time was the player got dispossessed. Vinny went on to score and the goal looked to stand, but after a VAR review, they disallowed it. And I think this comes down to interpretation for me, because I think some people will say it's good pressing from Vinicius, he's entitled to put his foot there, but I think other people will say that it's an obvious foul, quite a clear foul. I personally think the referee got it right in disallowing the goal. The reason why is that I think Jack Hendry, in this context, I think he's clearly in possession of the ball. This isn't a 50-50 challenge. It's not a loose ball. And I think when Vinicius puts his foot there, I think he's stopping Hendry from following through with his kick. And I think Hendry, in this context, I think he's earned the right to pass the ball. But I also get why people think it's soft. Vinicius, he's clever. Don't get me wrong, he's clever. He puts the foot in. But I'd love to know what you think on this. And there's actually, it moves on then to another incident that looks quite similar. And I want to compare this one to an incident in the Belgium against Senegal game. And this involves Youri Tielemans and Lamine Camara. On the surface, they look identical, but there's actually a key difference here, in my opinion. So, again, this involves an attacker placing his foot in the defender's kick in motion. The defender kicks through the attacker's leg. But what is the massive difference here is that this is more of a loose ball. I don't think Kamara or Tielemans are clearly in possession of the ball. It's more of a 50-50 ball. And I think Tielemans, look, I think he's being clever again. Is he trying to actually play the ball? No, he's trying to win a penalty. But the thing is, he puts his foot in a position of a loose ball. Kamara kicks through the calf of Tielemans and a penalty was awarded. Like, it's unfortunate, but I just think the key difference here to the one that was in the Scotland-Brazil game is possession. The last incident then comes in the England versus Ghana game. This was in the group stage, and for me, this is one that I actually have very little doubt over, and I think most people here will actually agree. It comes when Ghana, I think it was one of their very few counter-attacks, player Adu, he's breaking into the penalty area and Ezri Konsa is recovering and he tries to make a challenge. He gets nowhere near the ball. I think he cleans out the attacker. I think there's clear contact and it's a goal scoring opportunity. I think this is the exact reason why VAR was brought in for, was to correct decisions like these. And I was gobsmacked when VAR wasn't in a position to intervene and tell the referee to come to the screen and look at it again. And even the manager, I think Carlos Queiroz was the Ghana manager. He even joked afterwards that VAR fell asleep during that incident. And yeah, I just don't think you can defend the challenge. But if somebody wants to defend it, feel free to. I'd be interested to hear why you think so. Sticking with the officiating, but it's more the technology that was introduced, this new ball sensor technology. I think I'm on board with this technology, and I think it would be a welcome addition to club football or football, future football. And the reason why is because there was 3 incidents where I felt like the technology was needed, and clearly was needed. Was the first incident came in the Sweden against Tunisia game and involved Sweden player Matthias Svanberg. He appears to score from, I think the free kick is played from a wide position and he appears to score from it, but the whole decision is centered on whether Alexander Isak gets a touch on the ball, because when the ball is initially played in, the goal scorer is offside. But if Isak has touched the ball, then the offside phase is changed, and therefore the goal scorer is onside. But when I watched it, like to the naked eye, it doesn't look like Isak gets a touch on it at all. But with this new technology, the sensor, it reacted and it showed a spike that there was a touch, and therefore the goal was correctly given. The second incident was a lot more dramatic. It came in the Croatia against Portugal game, and Croatia thought that they had got a dramatic late equaliser in the game. Again, this all centred on whether the player Matanovic, did he get a touch on the ball? He goes up the challenge for the header. To the naked eye, like I watched it live and even in the replays, it looks like he doesn't touch it at all. But again, the technology comes in and it shows a spike. I think the player afterwards said that he felt it brush off his hair. And look, as harsh as it is, I think the hair, it's part of your body, and if it's the slightest of touch, like a touch is a touch, just like offside is offside, no matter how marginal it is. And then the third incident came in the England and Norway game, and it centres around Nyland, the Norway goalkeeper. He believed that his kick had hit one of the wires that was suspended, one of the suspended broadcast wires that holds the camera up over the pitch, and they said that there was no spike in the technology, that the sensor didn't pick up a touch. But I think when it's subjective like that, it's not a subjective call. I think it can only benefit the game. The third area in this video that I wanted to talk about was regarding Argentina, and like there's been a lot of fallout from their antics after the game. You know, I don't condone what they did. I think they were bad losers. I think a lot of us really, guys, if like are bad losers. I don't. I think if I lost the World Cup final, I'd probably be a bad loser too. No, I wouldn't go as far as doing what some of the Argentina players did, but I've seen some people calling for bans, that they're a disgrace, you know, that they should be banned from next competitions, and I just think that's gone a bit too far. You know, I think, look, what they did was wrong. I think they'll get punished for it. If I'm looking at Argentina, it's like the way that they play, it's very much on the edge. You know, a lot of the time when they play on the edge, it separates them from other teams, and it adds to that mentality that they have, that they, you know, they don't want to lose a game of football. And look, with this match in the final, unfortunately, the edge, it's spilt over. They lost the game, they lost the head, and yeah, I think that should be it. Now, I saw a lot of people saying that their approach was quite cowardly, and how, you know, there was a lot of you know, mockery of like the way that they set up for the game. And I think what's important is to just give a little bit of context, because I think, like, firstly, they had one less day to prepare than Spain. You know, they played in the first semi-final, so they had 1 day less to recover. I think they also had to play 2 extra times in the knockout rounds. Against Switzerland was one, and Cape Verde, so that's an extra 60 minutes in the legs, something that Spain didn't have to do. Thirdly, the conditions as well on the day. I think whoever decided to have the World Cup final on at that time with that heat, like, it looked incredibly hot out there, and I could only imagine, like, the fatigue looked like it was setting in, and I could only imagine being a player out there how hot it would be. But lastly is that, like, you know, you have to bear in mind, lads, they're coming up against Spain. You know, like, they didn't set up this way throughout all the games that they played in the group stage and all the knockout games, but it's horses for courses. And like Spain, they just, the way that they play and they control the possession, they demoralize you. Like, you know, you're trying to get the ball back off them, and they're the best at keeping the ball. Like, there's no team that's going to go toe to toe with Spain in that aspect. And even France, that we all raved about, like, there were times where France in the semi-final, they couldn't get near them either. Like, so I just think, you know, it's quite unfair to kind of knock them in that aspect. You know, the better team won. Spain on the day, I think they should have put them to bed a lot earlier. I think they had many chances, And that's my only kind of complaint from them, is that sometimes they aren't clinical, but they were by far the better team. I think it's only right to give credit to Spain. I think what Spain represented in the tournament was control. Their footballing philosophy is dominating football on a global level. I think, the old phrase of attack is the best form of defense, it needs to be changed to possession is the best form of defense, because if you have the ball, the other team isn't going to score. And I think nobody keeps the ball like Spain. Nobody controls the game like Spain. But what impressed me with Spain was their defensive structure. I mean, if I had told you before the tournament started that a back four of Pedro Porro, Cubarsí, Laporte, and Cucurella would only concede one goal in the whole tournament, I think you would think I was mad. Not that like these players that like individually they are good players. It's just that doesn't scream of a defense that has invincibility about them, or a great defensive structure about them. But they did. They looked brilliant in defense. They were just constantly in the right positions. To stop transitions. They didn't give anyone a chance, really, like guys. So I think Rodri, he does deserve enormous credit as the anchor in that team. He's the heartbeat of the team. Everything goes through him. But it isn't like a team that is just a group of individuals. I feel like they really are a collective, and they've got some names that started almost every game in the World Cup. When you look at Boyena, Oyarzabal, Dani Olmo, brilliant tournaments, but they often don't get the headlines, but like they just get the assignment. They understand the philosophy, they know where they need to be on the pitch, they understand the rotations, and they know where the next pass is going to be. I think the only criticism I hinted at there is just their lack of ruthlessness. I think sometimes, even in games where they have won, I'm often kind of like, geez, they could have scored more there if they wanted to. But yeah, that's the only kind of weakness that I had. And I think a lot of people went overboard as well with their opening draw against Cape Verde, because I think they had many chances in that game. And I even did a short after the game, and it was titled "Don't Write Spain Off Yet," because I just felt like, they were warming up in the World Cup. It's about how you finish the World Cup. It's not how about you start the World Cup. And look, I got it right. I had them as my pre-tournament winners before a ball was kicked. So look, I'm happy with that one. I have to start there. Since 2008, they've won 3 European Championships, they've won 2 World Cups, and they've won a Nations League. And like their influence goes beyond the national team. Pep Guardiola dominating English football for many, many years. Mikel Arteta for Arsenal, he's brought them back to the top. You look at Unai Emery, he's one of the best cup managers in world football. So like these are all Spanish coaches that are at the top of club football, and it's not a coincidence. It's a footballing philosophy that continues to evolve, and I think right now everyone's trying to play catch up. Moving on then to my goal of the tournament, and it might surprise a few people because this goal actually came in the second match of the competition. It was South Korea's equaliser against Czechia, and it was scored by their midfielder Hwang. This one just stood out to me because I just felt like technically it was just brilliant. You could see Hwang, he's played through the middle. He's got a defender trying to recover. He's got a goalkeeper rushing out to try and close him down. But in one movement, he chops back onto his right foot, and that touch, like, it just completely sells the defender. He is completely out of the equation at that stage. The goalkeeper, he sat down from that touch, and just the composure then from Hwang to just delicately dink it over the keeper. And I believe if Messi had scored, I think we'd be talking about it a lot more. So for me, it's my goal of the tournament. My save of the tournament, this one might be a surprise again. It might go over a lot of people's heads, is Eamon Damin. There's been a lot of great saves in the tournament, some fantastic saves, but I think this one in isolation, I think it trumps them all. And it starts from a corner, Damin, he initially comes out, he punches clear, but the second ball is taken by Japan. They shoot, the shot comes in, it takes a huge deflection off of his own defender. And this is what makes the save even better for me, is because it's the reaction after it's taken the deflection and the short space of time that the goalkeeper has to react. He somehow gets his hand back enough to be able to just claw it away. And even when you see the replay of the goal line technology, like it looks like it's over, but it's just when you see the overhead angle and you can see with the curvature of the ball that there's just this slightest bit of the ball that isn't over the line. It's one of them saves where I looked at it, I was like, how did he keep that out? Moving on to my game of the tournament, I don't think anything comes close for me in terms of drama, in terms of tension, in terms of jeopardy. And just the way that the game played out was Argentina against Egypt in the round of 16. What really made this game so good was the fact that, Egypt are massive underdogs. They take the lead, and suddenly the game plan that they came with, which was, to sit back and try and counter, that becomes a lot more prevalent now, and it becomes a lot more interesting because Argentina, who are the favourites, they have to commit more bodies forward, and it just makes a great game. Then Egypt think that they've scored a second goal, and to be honest with you, the second goal that eventually gets disallowed, it probably would have been my goal of the tournament, because Hassan for Egypt there, he runs through, the ball falls to Salah, and his true pass there, the perfect weight, and then Zico dinks it over Emi Martinez. Unluckily for them, the goal gets ruled out for a controversial moment in the other side of the pitch with Lisandro Martinez, and they call a foul. Moments later, they break again. This time, they do go 2-0 up. It does stand a breakaway goal. You're thinking then, it's 2-0, and the reigning defending champions Argentina are like, are they going to actually bow out like this? Then Lionel Messi, guys, he shows us again why he is Lionel Messi. He stayed out in the right wing, started dictating the game. There was some brilliant pieces of play from out there, but it was his crossing that eventually led to Argentina coming back in the game. The first was across to Romero. He gets the assist, and then the second was a deflected cross that he eventually follows up, reacts quickest to the loose ball, and he gets the equalizer. And at 2-2 then, you're like, jeez, you think Argentina are just going to maybe go on and run away with it, but no, Egypt still had chances in the game. I think they had a couple of moments. I think there might have been one with Marmouche where I think he might have made the wrong pass where it looked like they were in. They committed a load of bodies forward, Egypt, and then Salah gets dispossessed, and suddenly it's like an Uno card, because Argentina do to Egypt what Egypt had been doing to them all along. They fast counter, and Lautaro Martinez puts in one of the crosses of the tournament. He finds Enzo Fernandez, and he finishes to make it 3-2, and Argentina progress. But I just felt like this game had everything. It was an underdog pushing the champions to the brink. It had controversy with the disallowed goal. It had momentum swings. It had individual brilliance. I thought I'd finish with my team of the tournament, but I'd love to hear yours in the comments. I think everyone kind of has different opinions, and some things stand out to them more. But for me, I'm going with goalkeeper Unai Simon, right back Pedro Porro, centre backs Laporte, Saliba, left back Cucurella. Now, I know people might be thinking I'm crazy leaving out Barsi. I think he had a fantastic tournament, but I'm only kind of splitting hairs here. I think Saliba actually had an outstanding tournament for me. I don't think he put a foot wrong in the whole tournament, if I'm being honest. And I think him going down injured in the semi-final against Spain was a big factor in France losing the match, in my eyes, because I think when he went off the pitch, I think Spain looked a lot more dangerous. But France only conceded one goal when Saliba was on the pitch. And unfortunately for Cubarsí, the only goal that Spain conceded came from him losing out on a header to the Ketelaere in the Belgian game. My midfield three is, I have Rodri, Jude Bellingham, and for me, Michael Olise. Now, I heard a lot of people giving Dani Olmo a shout, and I hear it. I think he had a very steady World Cup. Um, but for me, I think Olise, I think he had an outstanding tournament. I think the one game that he was poor in against Spain in the semi final, I don't think that can undo all the great work that he had done before. I think he broke the tournament assist record, the World Cup assist record. He was France's creative spark, and yeah, I think he deserves his spot in my team of the tournament. And lastly, the attack. I've got a front three of Mbappe, Haaland, and that brings me to the last player, which is my player of the tournament, Lionel Messi. I know he was quiet in the final, but I don't think Argentina get there, to be honest with you, without him. I think in the games against Egypt, I think in the game against England, when his country needed him the most, I think he took responsibility. He influenced games, he created goals, he scored goals, and I think he dragged Argentina through some difficult moments. And I think even at his age, at 39, to still be producing moments of magic, it's just a remarkable feat. And look, he didn't lift the trophy this time, but for me, he was still a player that left the biggest mark on this World Cup. I just wanted to thank everyone that has been watching the videos, that has, got involved, that has liked, that has commented, that has subscribed. It's really the kind of main reason why I started Let's Chat Football LCF, was to have conversations with football fans, and getting people involved. It's what I want to do with the channel. I want to hear you guys, your guys' opinions on things. Maybe there might be a lot of stuff in this video that you disagree on, and I'm very much open to a discussion here on Let's Chat Football, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and views. So yeah, the World Cup is over, guys. The World Cup is over, and club football, it's only around the corner. But stay tuned to the channel for more content, because there's plenty more going to be coming up, with the transfer window is only kind of heating up now with the World Cup finishing. Make sure you're subscribed, because we're only getting started. But yeah, until next time, take care, and let's chat football.